Hello everyone and welcome back to our Vivarium build here at Ecoarium. Been a couple of days or so since I left you in the previous segment, and it's given the expanding foam a chance to dry out. So today we're going to be carving it out. We're going to be attaching the media using silicone to here, and hopefully getting the background itself silicone on the back of the tank. And we're also going to be making the media that we're going to be using in the land and aquatic or semi-aquatic section of the terrarium itself. So let's get started. We got lots to do, and I'm excited. Okay, so here we go. We're about to get started. Now, before I use my carving knife here, I like to break off the big chunks just using my hands, and it tends to work nicely for me. I get a rather smooth edge doing it this way. So watch how I do it, and maybe it works for some of you as well. You want to just stay up close to the margin. You don't want to dig in too far because you don't want to remove the foam that's actually holding the wood in place, right? So, see, I'm trying not to dig in too deep, just enough to strip it. Okay, so I've carved out the foam, and I want to just quickly kind of show you guys a few little pointers, I guess, over here. When I carved it out, in most areas, I got as close as possible to show off my driftwood and to make the transition seamless from the wood to the background itself. But in some areas where you have your anchor points, the joints over here that are anchoring the main part of the piece of driftwood to the background itself, you don't want to scrape that out too far. You still want to leave a little bit of foam because that's what's actually holding the pieces of wood in place. So don't go too thin on your anchor points over here and over here. You want to leave some meat. You want to leave some of that foam over there to hold these pieces up, right? But everywhere else along the margins, you can carve this back as close as you can to show off some of the features of the driftwood itself. Okay, so next we're going to be covering the background itself with silicone, and then we're going to be putting media on top of that silicone itself. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we're about to get started here with the background. You're going to need a few things. Number one, you're going to need silicone, and in this case, some aquarium-safe silicone. You're going to need the caulking gun, obviously. And for the media that's going on the background itself, I've chosen two sizes of orchid bark here, a small and a medium. To that, I'm going to be adding some sphagnum moss, just dried sphagnum moss, which I'll be chopping into smaller pieces so that it sticks a little bit better to the silicone. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of Pro Mix over here, which is peat-based with a little bit of perlite. So let's go ahead and get started. This shouldn't really take too long. Do keep in mind, if you're doing this, you want to be in a well-ventilated area because the silicone puts out a lot of fumes and does smell kind of strong. So make sure you're aware of that. Okay, let's start with the silicone. I'm going to try to do this in sections so that I don't overwhelm myself with too much silicone all at once and it doesn't start drying on me. And you want to be generous with the silicone. You want to leave thick layer of silicone, enough for those pieces to really get pushed in there and hold them. Okay, I've completed the background. Here it is. Now you can see the media, the coarse media, which is the bark, the two different types of bark, and the sphagnum, have filled in most of the background itself. But there's these little nooks that they don't just fill all the time that's visible, and the silicone dries to a little white color that I don't really like. So I use that peat media to fill in, and then it just becomes this natural look to it. So the silicone is going to take about a day or two to dry up, but we'll probably need, I'm going to say probably a couple of weeks from my experience for that strong vinegary smell to kind of start going away. A good way to help that is to start misting it and watering it after it dries up to wash away and some of that smell, but you will need to drain the tank a couple of times if you're doing that periodically. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and silicone the background. We're going to put a few beads of silicone right in the back over here, just a few, and this will help us adhere the background to the back of the tank. But what also it's going to do is, in case we ever change our mind or something goes wrong and we need, for whatever reason, to take out this background, it becomes an easy thing. We can just pry it out very easily and remove it and do whatever we have to do. Okay, so you'll see that I just put 2 wads of paper here to make sure that that gap is even and stays like that while I'm pouring the media and shoving it into the crevices over there. If they're not there, then while I'm filling the one side, the false bottom will move all the way to the other side. So it's just really for that reason only. This is where I want my water to drain, and I want it to be free flowing in this area to allow as much water to come to the front on this side in case I need to ever siphon it out. And also to make it a lot lighter than to just have it full of just media. So just a slight layer over here underneath the slant where I'm tapering off to the land section. Okay, so I have here some dried oak leaves. We call it just leaf litter. Because the tank itself is intended for dart frogs, that's the reason why I spread this layer of leaf litter down in the bottom on the ground section over there. So it serves multiple purposes. So it's food for the microorganisms like the springtails and the isopods that we use to inoculate our tanks. And it's also cover for the frogs. In the wild, they're used to foraging on the ground area, hiding amongst the leaves, just like this. So this is where they'll be hiding in amongst that leaf litter, looking for those springtails and fruit flies and isopods and any other bugs that might be hiding underneath those leaves. So it's really important, if you do intend to keep dart frogs, to have some leaf litter as a layer for your ground area. And also make sure that this leaf litter comes from a place where they don't use pesticides or herbicides or anything harmful that could harm your frogs. You can wash it, boil it to disinfect it in order to mitigate that. But in the end, just make sure that it doesn't have anything that could harm the frogs. Okay, so here we go. We have the completed vivarium. I would call this a simple vivarium because it just doesn't have all the bells and whistles like the water features and the foggers or things along that line, but it will do the job very nicely for dart frogs and for the plants. In this particular one, I'm not going to be using too many crazy rare plants. Your basic bromeliads for neurogelias, that is, for my dart frogs to breed in. I might add in some air plants, Zelandias, a few peperomias, some begonias, etc. And I'm going to let it cure for a few more days before I actually put anything in it at all. I will be doing a separate video for the planting of this tank itself, and over there I'll be talking more in depth about each of the plants and the type of conditions that they like to thrive in. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next video.